Chocolate's been in my family my whole life. My grandma actually did chocolates. She worked at a ton of different chocolate shops during her life. It was really interesting. One of my cousins found all kinds of articles, I guess in like 1912 and 1920. There's like a hand dipping chocolatier strike. So all of these factories used to employ women, and they would kind of treat them like worse than like child labor. It was really extreme circumstances. But my grandma was one of the people that worked in those shops. And she actually, my dad remembers as a child, her going to work, and she would wear this rubber apron that at the end of her shift, she would just wipe off all the chocolate onto the rubber apron. She would put as much chocolate onto that apron and bring it home to the kids because they couldn't afford chocolate. So that was their chocolate, was just the scraps after her whole day of work, whatever she could get off of her hands onto the apron. And I think, that's probably what started it, was way back then. As a child, I just remember my grandmother was older, and she would come to our house for the holidays, and she would dip chocolates. They would make all kinds of candies, and we would dip them and give them to our neighbors and our friends for the holidays. And that was kind of, I don't know how it started. Afterwards, my dad retired, my parents were divorced, he was bored, and some of his friends said, well, why don't you start dipping chocolates and selling them at boutiques? And so he did. He actually would sell them at various locations, but it was just a hobby. And I used to go and help out, and I'd go mostly eat the chocolate and sample them. And I did that most of my life. After a while, I met Katie. Her and I were trying to figure out what we wanted to do, so we opened up a shop with my dad. Nobody else wanted to do it in our family. There's all kinds of problems. One of it is just believing in yourself, trying not to listen to anybody, and just trusting your own heart and your own gut. Everybody will give you advice on how you should do your business differently or what you should do differently. And I think you have to be true to you, and you have to be true to what you want, and kind of tune out people. I think an obvious extreme would be money, lack of money, not having enough capital to do all that you'd want to do. So being patient until you can make enough money to do it, that's a hard thing. And also just keeping up, trying to keep reinventing yourself and remembering why you're doing what you do. We almost went through bankruptcy. We almost went through like losing a house, losing our building. We went through everything. And I remember there were days when I didn't want to get out of bed, and I would just lay in bed and I would just be like, holy shit, how can it get worse than this? And what would motivate me is actually people like you, or people that would come into our shop, and how they would look and feel and act when they were eating our product. And it made me remember that there's nowhere like us. There isn't anything exactly like our shop. And without us, these people wouldn't be having fun at that time. And I think that was a good motivator for us just to keep going. You can always worry about what ifs and what would happen then. And you just have to keep plugging and not worry. With the spouse, you tend to not remember special things. You tend to take each other for granted. You tend to work your butts off, and then when you go home, you don't really want to do something else because you're tired. And I think that's the biggest struggle of working with a spouse. Sometimes I don't turn off my head, and so I'm always thinking of different ideas. I'm always thinking of business, and that can be good and bad. It's also important to remember to try not to stress out your partner, and to balance, to find a good balance. I think some entrepreneurs, all of them have that problem where they can't turn off their head. And I don't think it's always about money, and I don't think money is fluid. So you can have millions today and then it's gone tomorrow. And I think people think success is just all financial. Only you know what you can do, and everybody's full of advice, but you need to trust what's right.